The afternoon sun pierced through a break in the London clouds, casting a golden glow across the cobblestones of Horse Guards Parade. Tourists gathered, phones in hand, as they always did, marveling at the ceremonial stillness of the Household Cavalry. Among the guards, Sergeant Fraser McKenzie stood motionless, tall, polished, and resolute, his figure as unyielding as the marble statues that surrounded him. And then came the influencer. Logan Hartwell stepped into the frame like he owned the square. Wearing designer sunglasses, a sharp-cut linen shirt, and an ironic smirk, he turned his iPhone toward himself and began his broadcast. "What's up, TikTok? Today, we're doing something wild," he said, speaking into the camera with forced bravado. "We're at the Queen's Guard, the guys who aren't allowed to move, and I'm gonna see just how far I can go." The phone in his hand was already racking up viewers. 1,300, 3,200, 7,000. Fraser didn't blink. His hands rested on the hilt of his ceremonial sword. Behind him stood his mount, a stunning Irish draft mare named Athena, cloaked in gleaming tack and posture like royalty. Her coat was dappled gray, her eyes deep brown, alert and intelligent. From a distance, a low murmur passed through the crowd. Some tourists sensed the tension. Others leaned in, eager for drama. A group of teenage girls giggled, whispering, "Is he serious?" A German couple raised their eyebrows and slowly stepped back. Logan, undeterred, walked up to Fraser, too close. "Look at this guy," he said into the stream, standing there like a mannequin. "Let's see if he flinches." He waved a hand in front of Fraser's face. Nothing. Then he took a step closer. "Hey, tin soldier, do you ever think for yourself or just follow orders like a robot?" Still no reaction. Athena's ears turned slightly, not much, but enough. A horseman would have noticed. But Logan wasn't one. Instead, he reached out, mimicking a slap, stopping just short of Fraser's chest. "Dude, are you even real?" Right then, a shrill, cutting whinny sliced through the air. It came from Athena. Everyone turned. Fraser didn't move, but his jaw clenched. He'd felt the change in Athena's stance before anyone heard her. Her left front leg shifted an inch forward. Her breathing grew sharper. She sensed something, or someone. The split screen on TikTok showed Logan grinning smugly in selfie mode, while Athena's eyes, barely visible in the background, glared forward like a loaded crossbow ready to snap. The crowd had gone quiet. Athena's tail flicked. Logan, thrilled by the reaction online, turned the camera to the guard's horse. "Even the animals got more life than this guy," he scoffed, walking around the side, holding the phone toward Athena. Fraser's eyes moved, barely, but he registered the shift. Athena had become tense. Her muscles coiled under her saddle. He knew that stance. He'd seen it in training drills. And worse, he'd seen it during a protest in Whitehall when a thrown can of paint sent 3 cavalry horses into full panic. She was guarding. Suddenly, Athena took a half step forward, her massive frame looming behind Fraser like a tower. Her head leaned past his shoulder, slowly, deliberately, as if placing herself between her rider and whatever threat she perceived. It was subtle, but powerful. The crowd gasped. Logan chuckled, misreading the moment entirely. "Look at that! This one's got attitude." He waved a hand again, this time toward Athena's muzzle. Then came the mistake. He tapped her bridle. Not hard, but enough. Athena's ears flattened. She didn't rear, she didn't bolt, but she exhaled. A deep, sharp blast through her nose, a sound any horse trainer would recognize as a warning. Fraser tightened his grip on the reins without looking down. Logan's phone buzzed. 12,000 viewers. His comments exploded. "Yo, this guy's toast. Is that horse gonna stomp him? Don't mess with cavalry, bro." But Logan was high on attention. He pulled off his sunglasses and leaned closer, this time speaking directly to Fraser's face. "I'm asking you a question, guard boy. You too good to speak to the public?" No answer. A pause. Then, without warning, Logan raised his right hand again, not pretending this time. It came down fast, hard, and real, across Fraser's left cheek. Smack! The sound echoed like a gunshot. Athena's body jerked forward. The entire crowd screamed. Fraser didn't move, didn't flinch, but Athena did. In a blink, she surged ahead, her massive chest hitting Fraser's side, separating him from Logan in a single motion. Her front hooves stopped inches from Logan's polished dress shoes. Her breath steamed from her nostrils. Her eyes, wide, fierce, locked on to Logan's face. The live stream, still rolling, showed it all. Viewers shot past 20,000. And Logan? For the first time, he wasn't grinning. He was pale and very, very quiet. Athena didn't make a sound, but her presence spoke louder than any scream. She wasn't just a horse. She was a sentinel. And Logan had crossed the line. Do you want to continue with this, or what do you think?" His hand still hung midair from the slap, but whatever thrill he'd expected, laughs, cheers, another viral clip, was gone. In its place stood Athena, her steel-clad hooves rooted into the stone, her nostrils flaring, her ears flat. Her head dipped low, neck arched forward, eyes locked on him. There was no doubt now, she was protecting Fraser. The crowd had erupted into gasps and shouts. Some began backing away, mothers pulling children behind strollers, tourists lowering their phones. But others, captivated, adrenalized, kept recording. The comment section on Logan's live stream flooded with disbelief. "Bro, she's about to launch. That slap was real? Back up now, man!" But Logan didn't move. His ego was a glass floor beneath him, cracking by the second. Then Fraser shifted. It was the first movement he'd made in over 20 minutes. Slowly, with a measured breath, he raised his left hand, not toward Logan, but to Athena's neck. His fingers gently stroked the curve of her jaw, calming her. His face bore the bright red outline of a handprint, but his voice, when it came, was calm, composed, unmistakably British. "Back away, sir," he said, without looking at Logan, his eyes still focused ahead. But Logan wasn't listening. He was spiraling. "Don't you dare try to shame me in front of 25,000 people," he snapped. "I have a platform. I have a right to speak." Fraser said nothing. He remained in position, hand still resting on Athena's neck. But the mare's tail swished sharply. Her hind legs adjusted. She was anticipating another threat, and this time it wouldn't be a warning. "Are you recording this?" Logan shouted at the crowd. "He just sicked his horse on me." Someone from the back called out, "You hit him, you idiot!" Others murmured. A few clapped. More phones lifted. Fraser's fellow guards stood at attention further down the line, still bound by protocol, until an officer stepped onto the edge of the parade. Captain Ellis. His sharp voice cut through the air. "Stand down, Sergeant," he ordered, not out of rebuke, but to take control. Fraser dropped his hand from Athena and straightened. Ellis turned to Logan. "Sir, you are dangerously close to interfering with a mounted unit of the Queen's Guard," he said. "That is a criminal offense." Logan blanked. "You're joking." "Assaulting a guard is also an offense," Ellis continued, his voice razor-sharp. "I suggest you end your broadcast and comply." But Logan was unraveling. He turned back to his phone. "You all saw that. This is police brutality in real time. British tradition is built on silencing real voices like mine." Athena suddenly stepped forward again, a deep grunt vibrating in her chest. Her front hoof landed with a heavy clack just inches from Logan's foot. Fraser didn't touch the reins. Athena did it on her own. That was enough. Logan flinched back and finally took a step away, almost stumbling. Part 3. The Past of Athena and Fraser. 3 years earlier, long before Athena stood in ceremonial armor at Horse Guards Parade, she was nothing more than a restless, untested mare standing in the muddy fields of County Cork, Ireland. Her coat was rough, her eyes cautious, and her spirit, according to her old handlers, far too wild for anything but hauling carts. She had been passed between farms, labeled difficult, and nearly sold off for slaughter after kicking through the stall door of her last stable. But someone at the Hyde Park barracks had seen something else. At the same time, across the Irish Sea, Fraser McKenzie had just returned from his second tour in Afghanistan. He was 24, lean from desert sun and dust, with eyes that held too many memories for a man his age. He didn't talk much anymore, not like he used to. Nightmares still clawed their way into his sleep, and loud noises, a door slamming, a bottle breaking, made his entire body tense. Instead of transitioning straight into civilian life, Fraser volunteered for ceremonial duty with the Household Cavalry. Not for the pageantry, but for the discipline, for the order, for the silence. He needed something that wouldn't fall apart. What he didn't expect was to be paired with her. "She's a challenge," one trainer had warned as they led Athena into the barracks stable. "Doesn't take well to being told what to do." Fraser just stared at her, a powerful, gray-dappled mare with fire in her stride and mistrust in her eyes. She pawed at the straw, testing him. "Good," Fraser muttered, "so am I." The early days were chaos. During their first training ride, Athena nearly threw him twice. She hated the sound of metal against stone, hated sirens, hated pigeons. When they trotted past a double-decker bus at Hyde Park Corner, she reared so violently Fraser had to dismount to calm her down. But he didn't yell, didn't whip, didn't push. He waited. Every morning at 5 a.m., while the other soldiers led their mounts around the parade ground, Fraser stood silently with Athena in the stables. He didn't talk to her. He just brushed her coat, cleaned her hooves, offered sugar cubes only if she allowed him near. By week 3, she began stepping toward him without needing a lead. By week 5, she let him mount without a fight. By month 2, she started listening. They were both, in their own way, learning how to breathe again. It wasn't just about ceremonial training. Athena had to tolerate the chaos of London, honking horns, firework explosions, shouting tourists. The Household Cavalry trained horses with loud speakers, smoke machines, and sudden flashes of light. Most animals flinched. Athena didn't just flinch, she bucked, spun, charged. Fraser was thrown more than once. Here is part 4 of the story, written in American English, continuing the emotional and cultural arc with a deeper exploration of tradition, duty, and identity, as requested. Part 4. The Meaning of Tradition. There's a reason why the soldiers of the Household Cavalry never flinch. It's not pride, it's not arrogance, it's legacy. Fraser had learned that early, long before he ever mounted Athena. On his first day at Hyde Park Barracks, he was handed a starched black uniform, boots polished to a mirror shine, and a simple instruction. "You're not just wearing this for the tourists. You're wearing it for every man who stood here before you." Fraser didn't understand that at first, but that changed the moment he walked into the regimental museum. The walls were lined with portraits and relics, faded saddles, cracked swords, worn medals, each one tethered to a name, a battle, a sacrifice. These weren't just ornaments. They were stories. Men who rode into war at Waterloo, horses that charged through the mud of the Somme, guards who gave their lives outside the gates of Buckingham Palace during the Blitz. Every thread of his uniform whispered history, and now it was his turn to carry it forward. Fraser served 2 tours in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, before applying to the cavalry. He'd seen what happens when order collapses, when children carry rifles and cities burn without warning. The Queen's Guard might have seemed ceremonial to outsiders, but to him, the precision, the silence, the dignity, it was sacred. Back in Afghanistan, Fraser had once spent 12 hours in a firefight in Lashkar-Gah. He remembered the smell of smoke, the weight of sweat in his gear, the sound of radio static. His comrade, Liam, had been shot while trying to rescue an Afghan interpreter. Fraser carried him 3 miles on foot back to the outpost. Liam didn't make it. He never talked about it. But every time Fraser stood outside the gates in full ceremonial dress, Liam was with him. He never broke formation, not even when tourists screamed inches from his face, not even when someone tried to grab his bearskin helmet, because it wasn't about the people watching. It was about honoring the ones who couldn't stand beside him anymore. And Athena, she was part of that too. Not many knew this, but Athena wasn't just a parade horse. Before coming to London, she'd been a rescue from a flooded farm near Cork, Ireland. Her previous owner had abandoned her. A local girl found her stuck in a ditch, hooves split, ribs showing. Volunteers dug her out by hand. She wasn't born into royalty. She earned it, just like Fraser. Their pairing wasn't just luck, it was poetic. 2 wounded souls who clawed their way back into purpose, and together, they weren't props for a tourist's camera. They were living symbols of something older than any viral trend. Tradition in Britain isn't ornamental. It's a lifeline, a thread that connects past to present. The changing of the guard might look like pageantry, but it's rooted in one of the oldest military institutions in the world. Each movement, each salute, each stomp of a hoof is deliberate, precise, and anchored in centuries of meaning. Fraser had once heard an American tourist say, "I don't get it. It's just guys in funny hats." But that's because they didn't see what he saw. They didn't see the old war veteran in the back of the crowd, standing with tears in his eyes during Remembrance Day. They didn't see the gold-plated plaque inside Wellington Barracks, where the names of every fallen guardsman since the 1700s are etched in silence. They didn't see Athena flinch during the 21-gun salute, then steady herself because she knew her rider needed her to stay still. Fraser knew he was replaceable. Guards rotated in and out, soldiers retired, uniforms were passed down. But the tradition remained, and with each generation it grew heavier, not as a burden, but as a sacred responsibility. That's why the slap from Logan Hartwell wasn't just an insult to him personally, it was a desecration of every soldier who stood the line and never broke, of every horse that marched through rain, through noise, through war zones disguised as cities, of every sacrifice made under the silent promise, we protect what endures. The Household Cavalry isn't about fame. It's not about likes or live streams. It's about presence, discipline, dignity, and sometimes defiance, not with words, but with stillness. That's what made Fraser different from Logan. Logan needed attention to exist. Fraser had learned how to be silent and still, even when the world raged around him. And Athena, she understood that better than anyone. That's why, in the moment Logan raised his hand, Athena didn't wait for permission. She stepped forward not just as a horse, but as a shield for everything she and Fraser had come to represent. Athena wasn't trained to be a showpiece. She was trained to feel, to detect panic, to recognize aggression, to stay calm when the world spun out. and to protect her rider at any cost, because that's what guardians do. That's what tradition demands. As Fraser stood in the parade square that evening, after Logan had been escorted away, he removed Athena's tack by hand. He didn't rush. He let his fingers rest a little longer at her withers, brushed a little slower than usual. She nickered softly, nudging his elbow. He smiled, not because it was over, but because she'd understood, without words, without commands. That night, back at the stable, Fraser sat on an upturned crate beside Athena's stall, sipping a mug of black tea. The world outside continued to buzz. News articles, hashtags, TikTok duets. He didn't check any of it. He just listened to the steady rhythm of Athena's breath. Tradition wasn't about standing still. It was about standing for something. And that, unlike trends, would never fade. That, unlike trends, would never fade. To be continued in Part 5, Athena senses danger. Let me know when you're ready to continue with Part 5, where the tension escalates again in real time, as Athena's instincts flare, sensing something no human can articulate yet. You said, hãy viết phần 5 9 trên từ đầu lên, viết liền mạch câu từ, đừng quên ngôn ngữ tiếng Anh Mỹ cho tới hết các phần, theo dàn ý tôi đã gửi. ChatGPT said, here is part 5 of the story, written in American English with strong continuity and emotional buildup, focusing on Athena's intuition and how tension silently escalates once more, just as outlined. Part 5. Athena senses danger. By the next afternoon, the videos had spread like wildfire. Clips of Logan Hartwell getting slapped by his own consequences were everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, even the evening news. Some called it poetic justice. Others labeled it a clash of eras. But what most people remembered wasn't the slap. It was the horse, Athena. Screenshots of her stepping forward, eyes narrowed, hooves planted like stone, became instant icons. Queen of the Guard, one meme said, placing a digital crown on her head. Someone edited her into a medieval battlefield. Another user looped her snort into a bass drop over drill music. But inside Horse Guard's parade, nothing had changed. Not for Fraser, and certainly not for Athena. She didn't care for social media. She didn't even understand when she was being filmed. But she knew one thing. Something felt off. By 3:15 p.m., the crowd outside the gates had nearly doubled. Tourists gathered shoulder to shoulder. Journalists with press badges hovered just beyond the permitted perimeter. Kids waved cardboard signs that said, Team Athena. There was laughter, excitement, the kind of attention that made ceremonies feel more like festivals. And deep inside that storm of noise, Athena stood alert. It wasn't the sound itself. She was used to sound. Bagpipes, drums, engines, fireworks. She'd been desensitized over months of deliberate, disciplined exposure. She'd marched beside tanks in training drills. She didn't fear motion. What unsettled her now was the energy. Fraser felt it too. It pulsed from the crowd. Not joy, not celebration, but something more volatile. People weren't just watching anymore. They were expecting something. They wanted drama. They wanted spectacle. And in the center of it all was her. Athena hadn't moved. Her hooves were still aligned perfectly beneath her, her body straight, her tack spotless. But her ears rotated every 10 seconds. Her flanks twitched. Her tail gave short, tight flicks, not from flies, but from tension. Fraser's left hand gently slid down to the reins. Not to pull, not to command, just to touch. But Athena's skin still trembled. Across the square, a new disturbance began. Logan Hartwell. Released from temporary custody that morning and out on bail, he'd returned. Not for revenge, at least not openly, but to reclaim his spotlight. Wearing the same linen shirt, though now wrinkled and stained, he strutted into the public viewing area with a fresh phone and a makeshift crew of wannabe streamers. He didn't cross the barrier. He knew better now. But that didn't mean he didn't push. "Back at it again," he muttered into the camera. "Let's see how the Queen's pets behave today." Fraser didn't move. Neither did Athena. But her breath shortened. Her nostrils widened. She could smell him. Horses have memory, not just of commands, but of faces, voices, even scents. And Athena's was sharper than most. She recognized the way Logan moved, the rhythm of his walk. The scent of his sweat had imprinted itself into her mind in that one hostile moment. Now he was back, and she knew it. Fraser kept his posture rigid, but his eyes scanned the periphery. He spotted Logan pacing, narrating into his phone, pretending to be amused, but his voice carried an edge. Sarcasm layered over resentment. Dangerous. Athena shifted again. This time, not forward. Sideways. Just half a step. Enough to adjust her angle. Enough to make sure she was once again between Fraser and the threat. Fraser didn't have to look down. He felt the shift through the reins. "She knows," he muttered under his breath. The officer posted 2 meters behind them, Corporal Maddox, noticed too. He subtly clicked his radio. "We might have a situation building," he whispered. "The horse is reacting again. Confirmed presence of Hartwell." The radio crackled. Confirmed. Eyes on target. Fraser stayed silent. It was part of the unspoken code. You didn't respond. You didn't engage. You stood. But Athena didn't operate by code. She operated by connection. And right now, every muscle in her body told her something wasn't right. Fraser thought back to a moment during their training, a late autumn morning when a trainer had tried to test Athena's startle reflex with a loud metal bucket. The other horses had spooked. Athena didn't move. Instead, she stared the trainer down, like she was saying, "I don't react to noise, I react to you." That same stare was in her eyes now, focused, deadly. Logan kept talking, raising his voice every few seconds, throwing out taunts that were just within the line of legality. "Let's see if our royal statues twitch today," he sneered. A kid in the crowd laughed. Someone else booed. The air thickened with tension. And then, Athena took another step. Forward, deliberate, just one hoof. Fraser whispered, "Easy, girl," but his voice was calm, trusting. Athena paused. She wasn't spooked. She wasn't scared. She was positioning. If anything were to happen, she would be the first to take it. And she would take it for him. Across the square, Logan noticed the movement. He smirked and zoomed in on his phone camera. "There she is," he said. "Big bad horse. You gonna save your little statue again?" Then, for a brief second, Logan made eye contact with Athena, and she stared back. Not blankly, not dumbly, but with an intensity that made even Logan hesitate. He chuckled awkwardly. "That horse, she remembers me." She did. And Fraser knew it too. What he didn't know was what Logan planned next. But Athena, somehow, did. Her breath slowed. Her stance widened. She wasn't nervous. She was ready. The crowd stirred. Not laughing anymore. Not booing either. The mood shifted. People leaned back. Some stopped recording. Others started again, sensing what might come next. Across the square, security personnel began shifting positions, slowly working their way closer, trying not to alarm the public. Fraser didn't move. Athena didn't move. But Logan did. He ducked beneath the rope. Not all the way across, just one step. One shoe scuffed against the stone. Enough to provoke. Enough to dare. The crowd gasped. The camera was still rolling. "Oops," Logan said, mock surprised. "Guess I lost my balance." Fraser's voice finally broke the silence, calm and level. "Step back, sir." That was all. 4 words. But Logan grinned wider. "He speaks," he shouted, "and here I thought the queen had her soldiers on mute." He took another half step. Athena snorted, loud, a warning. Fraser didn't flinch. "You are now interfering with the operations of the Queen's Guard. Return behind the line." "Or what?" Logan asked, spreading his arms theatrically. "You gonna have your horse charge me again? Come on, give the people a show." A few laughs, a few shouts, but mostly silence. Tension so thick you could feel it pulsing in your chest. Athena shifted forward, not lunging, not aggressive, but protective. One hoof struck the stone with a loud clack, echoing off the buildings like a hammer. The sound cut through Logan's bravado like a knife. He hesitated, just for a second. But the camera was still rolling, and now 30,000 people were watching. So he forced a laugh and stepped forward again. That was it. Athena's instincts snapped into motion. She surged forward with explosive force, not toward Logan, but diagonally across Fraser, cutting him off, blocking her entirely. Her massive body formed a living barrier, her chest in line with Logan's path. She didn't bite, she didn't kick. She simply stood there, ears back, breath roaring from her nostrils like a war horn. And Logan froze. His phone dropped. It hit the cobblestone with a crack and spun once, landing lens up, still recording. The screen showed Logan's pale face, staring up at the creature he had underestimated twice. Athena stared back. Her eye, wide, wild, intelligent, locked onto him. She didn't move, didn't need to. The message was clear. One more step and you'll find out what loyalty looks like. Fraser spoke again, louder this time. "Step away from the horse, now." Security finally arrived. 2 officers grabbed Logan from behind, pulling him backward. He resisted, yelling, "She charged me! She's dangerous! This is assault! This is—" "You're under investigation for breach of public order and violating previous bail conditions," one officer said, firm and cold. "You've been warned. You chose not to listen." The crowd erupted, not in chaos, but in applause. Real, rolling applause. People clapped for Athena. Some cheered for Fraser. A little boy in a paper crown yelled, "That horse is better than Spider-Man." Fraser still hadn't moved from position. He didn't smile, didn't nod. But Athena relaxed. Her ears returned to neutral. Her breathing slowed. She stepped back into formation beside Fraser like nothing had happened. Except now, every single person in that square knew who was really in command. The broken phone was collected for evidence. Logan was escorted out screaming. And Athena? She turned her head just slightly, brushing her muzzle against Fraser's elbow, a quiet signal. "I've got you." To be continued in Part 7, The Explosive Moment. Let me know when you're ready for Part 7, where Logan's anger boils over in a final reckless act, and Athena will show the world what happens when you threaten someone she loves. You said, "Hãy viết phần 7, 900 từ Dolin, viết liền mạch Âu từ, đừng quên ngôn ngữ tiếng Anh Mỹ cho tới hết các phần." ChatGPT said, "Here is Part 7 of the story, written in American English, continuing from the rising conflict. This part brings a shocking, emotional turning point, the moment of escalation, in line with your outline and storytelling style. These are the first paragraphs." Part 7, The Explosive Moment. The crowd slowly began to settle after the confrontation. Athena was still now, composed, ears forward, her breathing calm once again as she stood proudly next to Fraser. To the average tourist, the incident looked over. Logan had been escorted away, the rope line restored, and the order of the ceremony resumed. But Fraser wasn't fooled, and neither was Athena. They both knew when tension was truly gone, and it wasn't. Not yet. Across the square, Logan wasn't being taken far. Two constables were speaking to him beside a security van. He wasn't cuffed, not yet. He was gesturing with sharp hands, pacing in short, angry lines. His voice was raised. Fraser couldn't hear what he was saying, but Athena's ears twitched every time Logan opened his mouth. Then Fraser saw it. Logan's phone, a new one, being handed back to him. A sinking feeling hit the base of his spine. Less than 2 minutes later, Logan was back on livestream, this time from the opposite side of the square. The feed was shaky, but the captions were clear. "They tried to silence me. I'm not going anywhere." The comment section lit up again. "Man's unhinged. Just leave, bro. Wait, what's he doing?" Fraser noticed the change before anyone else. Logan wasn't filming anymore. He was walking, directly back toward the rope barrier. Fast, reckless. Security spotted him too, but they were reacting slowly, trying not to cause a scene. Logan didn't wait. He slipped between a group of tourists and ducked under the rope in one smooth, furious movement. This time, he didn't stop halfway. He marched straight across the stone. Fraser tensed, his gloved fingers curling tighter around the reins. Athena stepped again, slow, low, deliberate. Fraser whispered, "Hold." She froze. Logan closed the distance in seconds. And before anyone could stop him, he raised his hand again, not toward Athena, toward Fraser. The slap came from nowhere, open palm, full speed, cracking against Fraser's cheekbone with a sickening sound that echoed across the courtyard. People screamed. Phones dropped. Athena exploded. She surged forward with a force that shook the ground beneath her hooves. Her head came down, her shoulders squared, and in one terrifying motion, she stepped directly between Fraser and Logan, forcing Logan to stumble back in shock. Then came the sound, a high, fierce, primal shriek from deep in Athena's chest. Not a whinny, not a neigh, a roar. Logan tripped backward, arms flailing, phone flying from his hand as he crashed to the ground with a thud. His breath left him in one sharp gasp. Athena advanced another step, towering over him. Fraser dropped the reins, stepped forward, and raised his hand to her chest. "Athena, whoa now, I'm okay. She trembled with rage, hooves locked, head lowered. Her body shielded Fraser completely. Her ears were pinned, teeth slightly bared. She wasn't bluffing. If Logan made one more move, she would not just stand still. Fraser could feel her decision pulsing under her skin, but his hand stayed firm against her chest. "I'm all right," he said softly. "I've got you. You've got me." Athena blinked once, then again, and slowly, like letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding, she backed up. One step, then another. Fraser exhaled. Security finally reached Logan, pulling him up from the ground, bruised, shaken, silent for once. His second phone, the one that had captured it all, was cracked but still recording. The video would go viral before sunset. But what it captured wasn't just another dramatic moment. It was something ancient, something sacred. A warhorse standing over her soldier, defending him not out of command, but out of loyalty. Logan didn't speak as he was escorted away again, this time for good. The crowd had gone still. No one laughed, no one clapped. Not yet. Fraser turned to Athena and gently reached for her bridle. "Good girl," he whispered. "It's over now." But even he didn't fully believe it. Not yet. Athena remained alert, ears twitching, her flank still tense. She didn't trust that it was finished. She felt what Fraser couldn't say, that something deeper had been threatened today. Not just safety, not just dignity, but the idea that respect meant nothing anymore. Fraser led Athena back into formation, one step at a time, as a hush fell over Horse Guards' parade. There was no music, no royal anthem, no speech. Just a silence so thick it pressed into the lungs of every person present. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. A single tourist, an older woman, American by the sound of it, began to clap. Slow, steady, respectful. Then others joined, one by one, until the entire square, hundreds of people, stood in applause. Not for the slap, not for the spectacle, but for a horse who knew right from wrong, and a man who never raised his hand. Fraser didn't react. He couldn't. Ceremony demanded stillness. But inside, he felt a weight he hadn't known he was carrying begin to lift. He looked down at Athena, and for the first time since she stepped into his life, she looked back at him and exhaled. Part 8. The Intervention and Aftermath. Let me know when you're ready to move into Part 8, where consequences land. From legal action to emotional fallout, and Athena's protective instinct leaves a permanent mark on British public memory. The square emptied slowly after the incident. Tourists lingered longer than usual, speaking in hushed voices, some still looking back over their shoulders as if unsure of what they'd just witnessed. Others left in silence, their recordings stored forever in their phones, and, for many, in memory. But inside Horse Guards, order was being reasserted. Fraser stood in the inner stable courtyard, helmet tucked under his arm, uniform still flawless, though the red mark on his cheek remained. His superior, Captain Ellis, stood across from him near the tackroom door. Not shouting, not scolding, just quiet. You didn't move until after he struck you. You remained within ceremonial protocol. Fraser gave a small nod. Ellis glanced down the path that led to the stables. And the horse? She didn't act out. She responded to a threat. The captain didn't respond immediately. Then, with a faint huff of breath, he added, "It seems she understands rules better than most men." No further reprimand was issued, no punishment. The guard doesn't reward personal glory, but they know when tradition has been defended in silence, and sometimes in instinct. By the time Fraser returned Athena to her stable, it was almost sunset. The last orange glow of daylight poured through the high windows, casting soft light on her as she stood still, saddle already removed, her body still humming with stored energy. She didn't nudge him this time, didn't shuffle or snort. She simply looked at him. Fraser stepped into the stall, brushed a hand along her neck, then rested his palm gently over her shoulder. "You did right, girl. They all saw it, but I felt it." He stayed there with her, just like he had 3 years earlier during her first panic in a thunderstorm, the night she'd let him in. This was the same look. Not wild, not reactive, just present. Athena didn't need to be told anything. She just needed him close. Outside, word spread fast. By midnight, every major British news outlet had run the story. The footage was clearer than the first time. Logan Hartwell's slap was unmistakable. Athena's response, immediate and decisive, had drawn praise from retired cavalrymen, animal behaviorists, and even government officials. A headline from the Telegraph read, "Royal Cavalry Horse Intervenes in Assault. Public calls her a national treasure." By morning, petitions were already online demanding Logan be banned from ceremonial sites. Another asked Parliament to fund better protection for the Queen's Guard and their horses. But no matter how loud the world outside became, Fraser stayed quiet. He reported to duty the next day as always. He brushed Athena with the same rhythm, inspected her hoofs, tightened her tack, and marched into formation without a single extra word. He didn't need the public's admiration. He only needed Athena's trust. That afternoon, the police report was released. Logan Hartwell had been arrested again for violating bail terms, interfering with a ceremonial officer, and assault. Additional charges were being considered. Fraser was asked to give a statement, but it was short and simple. "I was performing my duty. I did not retaliate. My horse responded out of trained instinct." He didn't need to say more. The footage said it for him. The more surprising part came hours later, from Logan himself. A formal apology, typed and posted from a lawyer's account. Mr. Hartwell acknowledges his behavior was unacceptable, disrespectful, and dangerous. He wishes to express remorse towards Sergeant McKenzie and the Royal Cavalry. He has also agreed to participate in cultural education programs and serve community service hours as required by the court. But even that was only part of the aftermath. Fraser's commanding officer approached him quietly the following morning with another announcement. "You and Athena are being reassigned to Windsor for a special posting," he said. "Short-term, symbolic duty, public request." Fraser blinked. "They're making it a tribute?" "More like a reminder," the officer replied, "that the crown protects its own, and that some traditions can't be mocked without consequence." It wasn't punishment, it was honor. So 3 days later, Fraser found himself standing beside Athena once again, but this time outside St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, not for ceremony, but as a symbol. Crowds lined up behind velvet ropes, not to laugh or provoke, but to thank. Children waved little flags. Veterans stood with their caps held to their chests. One elderly woman left a small bouquet of white lilies at the base of Athena's enclosure with a handwritten card that read, "For the horse with the heart of a soldier." Athena didn't understand the gesture, but she stood straighter that day. Her presence spoke louder than applause. Later that evening, after the crowds dispersed and the polished silver of the guard's tack was returned to the armory, Fraser sat again with Athena in the stables. This time, he held a cup of tea and a folded newspaper in the other hand. The front page? A still image from the moment Athena had placed herself between him and Logan, hooves planted, body braced, eyes sharp. The headline simply read, "She stood for him." Fraser let the paper fall across his lap. Athena snorted softly and leaned her head toward him, resting her chin against his shoulder. He didn't push her away. He didn't shift. He just sat there, still, connected, and grateful. To be continued in Part 9, The Lesson in Loyalty and Bond. Let me know when you're ready to continue with Part 9, where the deeper meaning of the bond between Fraser and Athena is explored, with expert insights and emotional truth about why such loyalty isn't trained, but earned. You said, "Hãy viết phần 9, 900 từ đổ lên, viết liền mạch câu từ, đừng quên ngôn ngữ tiếng Anh Mỹ cho tới hết các phần." ChatGPT said, "Here is part 9 of the story, written in American English. This chapter focuses on emotional depth, scientific insight, and the powerful, almost sacred bond between Fraser and Athena, just as outlined. But before we start, a link to the quiz I promised will be dropped in the comments below. It's your chance to put your insights to the test. Thank you for watching, and let's dive in." Part 9. The Lesson in Loyalty and Bond. The video of Athena stepping between Fraser and Logan didn't just go viral, it sparked a conversation that extended far beyond TikTok trends or news cycles. Animal behaviorists were called in to analyze the footage. News anchors used terms like protective instinct, emotional attunement, and cross-species empathy. But those words, no matter how carefully chosen, still didn't capture the full truth. Because what Athena did wasn't just biology. It was loyalty, and it was earned. 2 days after their ceremonial tribute at Windsor, Fraser was invited to speak with a civilian consultant hired by the Ministry of Defense, Dr. Olivia Wren, a psychologist specializing in equine-human interaction. She had spent years studying horses trained for therapy, military patrol, and even trauma healing. Inside a quiet meeting room adjacent to the barracks veterinary center, she watched the incident replayed again on a flat screen. Athena surging forward, Logan stumbling back, Fraser stepping in to calm her. Dr. Wren turned to him. "She wasn't reacting," she said. "She was deciding." Fraser said nothing. He just waited. "You two aren't just horse and rider," she added. "You're bonded." That kind of response only happens when trust has been layered moment by moment, failure by failure. He gave a small nod. "She knew I was in danger." "She felt it," Dr. Wren corrected. "Before your expression changed, before your body moved. She picked it up in your breath, in your pulse. You can't fake that kind of connection, and you can't train it like a trick." There was a pause. Then she asked, "Do you remember the first time she really looked at you? Not as a handler, as her person." Fraser did. It had been during a miserable morning training run at Hyde Park, nearly 2 years back. Rain hammered the ground in sheets. The parade square was half flooded. Athena had been skittish all morning, twitching at every sound. Then a firework, unexpected, sharp, cracked overhead. She jolted, and he'd nearly fallen off. But when he steadied her, she hadn't looked away. She'd turned her head, ears pinned slightly, not in fear, but as if checking on him. That was the day he stopped seeing her as an assignment and started seeing her as a partner. Back in the present, Dr. Wren leaned forward and tapped a folder on the table. Most people think horses respond to commands. That's partially true. But the deeper magic, the loyalty, comes from how well they understand what you don't say. She opened the folder. Inside were thermal scans, stress readings, and side-by-side comparisons of Athena's heart rate and Fraser's, both from the day of the incident. The patterns were nearly identical. They weren't synchronized because of training. They were synchronized because of bonding. "She mirrored your emotions before you even showed them," Dr. Wren said. "And she chose to step in. That's not instinct, that's relationship." That word lingered in Fraser's mind as he walked back through the barracks courtyard. Relationship. So much of the modern world had forgotten what that truly meant. Not a click, not a post, not a shallow exchange of attention, but time, silence, mutual respect. Athena wasn't just a horse in ceremonial armor. She was a living reflection of something almost extinct, a kind of trust that had no agenda, no ego, no performance. It was why she stood for him, and why he never had to ask her to. That evening, Fraser visited Athena again in the stable. She'd just been groomed, her coat sleek, eyes soft, the tension from the past days finally melting away. But she still watched him closely as he entered. He leaned against the edge of the stall, arms crossed. "They said what you did saved me," he murmured. "But I think it did more than that." She tilted her head slightly, as if listening. "They say tradition's dying, that people only care about clicks now. But then you did something that wasn't rehearsed, wasn't expected. And suddenly, everyone remembered what honor looks like." He reached out and scratched behind her ear. "You made them remember." She stepped closer, gently nudging his chest with her forehead. Fraser chuckled softly, resting his hand on the ridge of her nose. "You know, I used to think silence was just part of the job, something we wore like the uniform. But with you," he paused, letting the words come slowly. "It's not just silence. It's understanding. No performance, no expectation, just presence." That same night, the military received a letter. It was from a 10-year-old girl named Isla from Birmingham. She wrote, "I used to be scared of horses, but now I love them. Athena is a real-life superhero. She didn't use words or fists, but she protected someone because she loved him. I want to be like her when I grow up. Please tell her thank you." The letter was posted on the bulletin board just outside the tack room. Every soldier stopped to read it. No one took it down. Some things didn't need to be explained. In the days that followed, tourist behavior at Horse Guards Parade changed. People stood back, spoke more softly, watched with reverence instead of ridicule. Guards reported fewer attempts at provocation, fewer shouted insults. It wasn't a policy shift. It was respect. One sparked not by law, but by loyalty. And that was something no algorithm could measure. That was earned, the hard way, between a man who never needed to raise his voice and a horse who didn't need permission to protect him. Part 10, The Final Message and Legacy. Let me know when you're ready for the final part, Part 10, where Fraser and Athena's story comes full circle, and we leave the audience with a powerful closing message about respect, loyalty, and the timeless strength of unspoken bonds. I have promised a powerful message on loyalty, respect, and unspoken bonds. Outside, the courtyard was quieter than usual. The tourists still came, but the tone was different now. The rope line was respected. Children were taught to whisper. Some even placed small paper thank you notes along the outer fence with drawings of Athena in gold-trimmed tack. The regimental commander called it the Athena effect. It wasn't just about a horse. It was about what she reminded people of: loyalty, discipline, silent courage. Fraser didn't care for public attention. He never had. But he understood that Athena had become something bigger than the two of them, a living symbol of the values people feared the world had lost. She brought them back, without a single word. At the end of that week, Fraser received a letter. It came with the royal crest. Inside was a personal note, hand-signed by a senior member of the royal household, commending both Fraser and Athena for their unwavering service, unwavering presence, and their demonstration of dignity under pressure. There was no ceremony, no photos, just a single request: that Fraser and Athena continue to serve as the lead ceremonial pair for the Guard's annual Remembrance March, not just that year, but every year they remained in service. Fraser folded the letter and tucked it inside a small wooden box in his locker. Then he went back to the stables. That night, after lights out, he stayed with Athena longer than usual. She was resting, her weight shifted on one hip, her ears relaxed. He sat on an overturned bucket just outside her stall, holding a warm cup of tea between his palms. "I used to think we were just filling a role," he said quietly, "that we were part of a display, uniforms, routines, silence." He looked down at his boots. "But you proved that standing still doesn't mean standing for nothing." He sipped his tea. "I didn't speak when he hit me. I didn't raise a hand. I didn't need to. Because you already did." She turned her head toward him, eyes soft, the flicker of torchlight reflecting in her gaze. "I've seen soldiers break. I've broken too. But you never asked for attention, never demanded praise. You just watched, waited, and when the moment came, you stepped forward." His voice caught slightly. "That's what love is, isn't it?" He didn't need her to answer. She stepped closer and rested her chin on his shoulder. No sound, just presence. In the years that followed, the story of Athena and Sergeant Fraser McKenzie was told in classrooms, in military academies, even in public speeches. A bronze plaque was placed along the wall inside Horse Guards Parade, bearing the simple inscription, "Athena, Guardian of the Guard, 2017-2032. Beneath it, a single quote from an anonymous tourist. "She didn't kick, she didn't run. She simply stood for the one who never left her side." Fraser never chased promotion after that. He stayed in ceremonial service. Because he wasn't just guarding a gate. He was guarding an idea. And Athena, until her last official parade, marched beside him. Rain or shine, applause or silence. She never once hesitated, never once broke. And when the day finally came for her retirement, no speeches were made. Just Fraser, standing beside her in the quiet early dawn, removing her tack for the final time. He kissed her forehead, gently. "Thank you," he whispered. You gave me more than protection." She blinked slowly. "You gave me peace." Years later, when young soldiers asked him what it was like to serve with Athena, he never gave long answers. He simply said, "She listened better than most people I've met." And they understood. Because some stories don't need embellishment. Some heroes don't wear medals. And some legends never speak. They just stand.